full of duality. But one who's fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil because is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called technically samadhi. So actually, it's a very good purport by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj that there will be always up and downs in this world. So actually, we are atomic particles of consciousness, Anu Chetan, and it is our nature to take shelter of the complete conscious being, Sri Bhagavan, Brihad Chetan. We are unable to develop faith in Bhagavan due to being absorbed in the objects of the material world. Only those who do not aspire for any worldly object, who are devoid of material possessions, and who do not depend on any object of the mundane world, can have faith in Bhagavan and depend on it. We can be completely dependent on Bhagavan by listening to powerful narrations from saintly persons who are living scriptures. So here, we have to hear this Bhagavad Gita from lips of pure devotees. So I'll read Srila Gurudev's translation. Ya sarvatrana visnehas tat prapya shubhashubham na vinandanti na dveshti tasya prajna pratishtita. Ya he who sarvatra in all situations, even for one's children and friendly, anavisneha, without excessive attachment, tat whatever, prapya achieving, shubha favorable, ashubham unfavorable, na vinandanti, he does not rejoice, na nor dveshti hate, tasya his pragya intelligence pratishtita is well fixed. One is always devoid of mundane affection and neither rejoices in prosperity nor despairs in adversity is known to be a person of fixed intelligence. Here the word anavisneha means free from all affection arising from material designations. Such persons certainly feel some affection because of compassion, but their affection is free from material designations. They do not welcome pleasing situations such as being honored or offended or offered palatable food, nor do they glorify those from whom they receive them by saying, "You are a highly religious personality who has been rendering service to great saintly persons for Paramahamsas. May you be happy." Conversely, when they are faced with an unpleasant situation such as being dishonored or beaten, they do not feel any aversion, nor do they curse their adversary, saying, you sinful person, may you go to hell." The intelligence of such a person is completely fixed or situated in trance, samadhi. He indeed is called Tita Prajna, one of fixed intelligence. Sarata Dakshini Prakashita Vritti. Affection is of two types, in relation with the body, number two, in relationship with Shri Bhagavan. Affection in relation with the body can be seen in ordinary persons who identify themselves with their bodies. Those who are of fixed intelligence are free from identification with their bodies and are therefore devoid of that type of affection. Because they are the well-wishers of all living entities, they are endowed with the second type of affection, which is in relation to Shri Bhagavan. This type of affection is continuously flowing within their hearts, but it rarely manifests externally. It may be seen in some special circumstances, but an ordinary person cannot detect it. So now, verse number 58, Yada sammarate kayam kurmo angani vasarvasha indriyani indriyathebhya tasya pragya pratishtita. Yada when sammarate withdraws, cha and ayam, this saintly person, kurma tortoise, angani limbs, eva as sarvasha completely, indriyani senses, indriyarthebhya from the sense objects, tasya his pragya, his intelligence, pratishtita, well fixed. When a person can completely withdraw his senses from their respective sense objects at will, just as the tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, then is said to be of fixed intelligence. With this verse beginning with Yada, Sri Bhagavan responds to Arjuna's questions. Kim asita? How does he sit? Indriyarthibhya means just as a person can withdraw his senses, such as the sense of hearing from their sense objects, in this case, sound. Similarly, who is Tita Pragya is able to withdraw his subordinate senses from external sense objects and fix them within his undisturbed mind. The example of a tortoise is given to illustrate this point. Just as a tortoise can withdraw his eyes, face, and so forth inside his shell at will, similarly, a person whose intelligence is fixed can withdraw his senses from the sense objects. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Swami Maharaj purport, uh, यदा सम्मरते चायं कूर्मो अंगानि सर्वशा इंद्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता यदा when Sammarate winds up cha also I am he kurma tortoise angani limbs eva like sarvasha altogether indriyani senses indriyarthebhya from the sense objects tasya his pragya consciousness pratishtita fixed. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge. The test of a yogi, devotee, or realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpent like serpents, um, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do don'ts and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the don'ts, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up his senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Keeping the senses away in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise, who keeps the senses within. So, nice example here. So, verse number 258, very important verse. Vishya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasavarjam dasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Vishya, objects for sense enjoyment, vinivartante are practiced to be refrained from niraharasya by negative restrictions. Dehina, for the embodied, Rasavarjam, giving of the taste, rasaha, sense of enjoyment, api, although there is asya, is parama, far superior things, drishtva, the experiencing, nivartate, he ceases from. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste is fixed in Krishna consciousness. Unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a disease for certain types of edibles. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, self-restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, etc. is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tested the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good if one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. ईर्ष्या विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिना रसवर्गं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते विषया. The sense objects vinivartante are forcibly restrained niraharasya for who practices sense restraint such as fasting. Dehina for an ignorant person in the bodily concept of life. Rasavarjam devoid of taste for sense object. Rasaha there is a taste. Api however asya for such a person of fixed intelligence. Param of Paramatma, the super soul. Drishtva having seen or realized. Nivartate reference. He who identifies himself with his body may restrict his enjoyment by withdrawing the senses from their objects, but his taste for sense pleasure remains. One whose intelligence is fixed, however, has realized Paramatma. Therefore, his taste for sense objects automatically ceases. Saratavashini. If one raises a doubt that even foolish or less intelligent persons may become detached from the objects of their senses by fasting or through sickness, Sri Bhagavan answers in this verse beginning with Vishya. The word Rasavarjam implies that such persons do not become free from the desire for sense objects. Rather, their taste for sense objects persists. Yet, one who is of fixed intelligence ceases to desire sense objects because he has direct realization of Paramatma. There is no flaw in this definition. Those who are able to realize the self are perfected souls or siddhas. They are not practitioners or sadhakas. Sarata Vashli Prakashika Vritti. Sometimes an ordinary person restricts his senses because of disease or because he is practicing Hatha Yoga or fasting. Still, desire for the sense objects remains in his heart. It is impossible to eliminate this desire without devotion to Sri Bhagavan. In this regard, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes as follows. The practice of ceasing to indulge in the objects of the senses through the process of fasting from them is only for extremely unintelligent people. This practice is followed by those who identify the self with the body. The eightfold yoga system known as Ashtanga Yoga also provides an opportunity for those who are less intelligent to become renounced from sense objects by engaging in the practices of yama and niyama, regulative principles, asana, postures, pranayama, breathing exercises, and pratyahara, sense control. This process is not acceptable for one who is sthita prajna, fixed in absolute truth. After directly seeing the beauty of the Supreme Truth, Sri Bhagavan, one who is sthita prajna becomes attracted to him and gives up all attachments to ordinary sense objects. There is provision for extremely unintelligent persons to withdraw their senses from sense objects by the process of fasting. Yet the jivas cannot attain their eternal auspiciousness without the process of spontaneous devotion or raga marga. When a person comes to the platform of raga or attachment to Krishna, he has realization of a sense object that is superior to all others, and thus he naturally gives up inferior pleasures. So, यततो हि अपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चिता इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मना. Yatatah, while endeavoring, he certainly, api, in spite of, Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Purushasya, of a man, Vipashita, full of discriminating knowledge, Indriyani, the senses, Pramathini, agitating, Haranti, throw, Prasabham, by force, Mana, the mind. The senses are so strong and impetuous, Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination, who is endeavoring to control them. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses, but in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and a perfect yogi, was misled by Menka into sex enjoyment, although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is difficult to control the mind and the senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot see such material enjoyment. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee who says, since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor. Whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it, and I spit at the thought. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious vegetables. Maharaj Ambarish also conquered a great yogi Durvasa Muni simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. यततो हि अपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चिता इंद्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसवं मनः. Yadata, who is endeavoring for liberation, he, because api, even Kaunteya, O son of Kunti Arjuna, Purushasya, of a man, Vipashchita, who possesses discrimination, Indriyani, senses, Pramathini, being churned, Haranti, steal away, Prasavam, forcibly, Manaha, the mind. O son of Kunti, the senses, when agitated, can forcefully steal away the mind. Even of a person who is endeavoring for liberation. It is beyond the capacity of the sadhaka to have complete control over his senses while he is within the stage of practice. But the endeavor alone is commendable. To explain this point, Shri Bhagavan speaks the present verse beginning with Yadata. Here, the meaning of the word Pramatini is those things that cause agitation. Saranthi Varshini Prakashita Vritti. The duty of the sadhaka is to endeavor very carefully to achieve control over his senses. One cannot become Sthita Prajna without being sense-controlled. The flickering senses are always agitated, and it is as difficult to have complete control over them as it is to control the wind. However, according to the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even this difficult task becomes very easy when one engages all his senses in the service of Sri Bhagavan. One can learn how to engage his controlled senses in the service of Sri Bhagavan from the daily activities of King Ambarish, which are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai mana Krishna padar vindayor vacham sivai kuntha gunadvarnane karo harer mandira marjana vishu shutim chakarachu satkatode mukunda lingadaya darshane drishau tadvritya gatra sparshe anga sangamam Granam Chatarpad Saroja Saurabhe Srimad Tulasya Sanam Pradarpite Pado Hare Kshetra Padanu Sarpane Shigorushi Kesha Padabhivandane Kamam Chadasena Tu Kama Kamya Yatottamashto Kajanashraya Harati. Ambarish Maharaj always engaged in the worship of Sri Bhagavan, Bhagavan Shri Krishna, by fixing his mind and remembering his lotus. His tongue in describing his name, form, qualities, and pastimes. His ears in hearing the topics of Bhagavan. His eyes in seeing Bhagavan's beautiful deity form. His sense of touch in experiencing the happiness of serving the feet of the devotees of Bhagavan. His nostrils in smelling the fragrant objects such as the tulsi and sandalwood paste that have been offered at the lotus feet of Bhagavan. His feet in circumambulating his abode, and his head in paying obeisances to Bhagavan and his devotees. And in this way, he controlled all his senses and engaged them in the service of Bhagavan. It is very beneficial and auspicious for sadhakas to follow this path. Tani sarvani sayyamya yukta sitamatpara pashehi yasya tasya prajna pratisthita. All these senses, some Sanyam, keeping under control, Yukta, the devotee or Bhakti Yogi, Asita, he should be situated, Matpara, dedicated to me. Vashe are controlled. He, because Yasya, whose Indriyani senses, Tasya, his Pragya, intelligence, Pratishtita is completely fixed. Therefore, one should subdue the senses by surrendering to me in Bhakti Yoga and remain under my shelter. Because only one whose senses are controlled is fixed in intelligence. He alone is Sthita Prajna. Here the word Matpara means my devotee, because there is no other way to conquer the senses other than to perform bhakti to me. This fact is apparent everywhere in the later sections of Bhagavad Gita. As Uddhav says in Srimad Bhagavatam, Prayasha Pundarikaksha Yunjato Yogino Mana Vishidanti Asamadhanan Mano Nigraha Darshitah अथात आनंद दुघम पदाम्बुजम हंसा शरेयन अरविंद लोचन सुखम नु विश्वेश्वर योग कर्म भीस तन्मायामी वियता नमानिना. All outside Krishna, yogis are generally unsuccessful in controlling their minds, and after endeavoring for a short time, they become tired and frustrated. Therefore, those who are expert in discerning between what is substantial and what is insubstantial take exclusive shelter of your lotus feet, which give unlimited pleasure to everyone, as the very foundation of their happiness. To show the difference between one in the stage of practice, a sadhaka, and one whose intelligence is fixed, see the pragya. Shri Krishna says Vashehi, which indicates that only the senses of one who is Sthita Pragya are under control. Sarartha Vashini Prakashika Vritti. One can escape the disturbance caused by a gang of dacoits by taking shelter of a valiant king. When the dacoits become aware of the shelter this person has taken, uh, they become subordinate to him. Similarly, the senses of a Jivatma are compared to a gang of dacoits and they automatically become controlled when he accepts the shelter of Bhagavan Shri Rishikesh, who is the indwelling witness of everyone and everything. Therefore, one should control one's senses in a simple and natural way by bhakti alone. It is said in scripture, Rishikena Vishikani, Rishikeshe Vishikani, Yasa Sthairya Gatani, सएव धैर्यम आपनोति संसारे जीव चंचल. Shiv Chaitanya Madhya Leela 24.184. It is very difficult to control the agitated senses in this world, but for those who engage all their senses in the service of Bhagavan, Shri Rishikesh, the master of the senses, their senses naturally become stable and controlled. So, yatato hi api hi kaunteya purushasya upashita indriyani pramatini haranti prasapapaka. Yatata, while endeavoring, he certainly api, in spite of kaunteya or son of Kunti, purushasya, of a man, vipashita, full of discriminating intelligence. Pramatini, agitating. Haranti, throw, prasabham, by force, mana, the mind. The senses are so strong and impetuous, Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind. Carry away the mind of even a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Hmm. The senses are very, very strong. So, there are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses, but in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Menka into sex enjoyment. Although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice. And of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and the senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot see such material enjoyment. One cannot see such material engagements. A practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, saintly, a great saint and devotee, who says, since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna, I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor. Whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it. I spit at the thought. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarish also conquered a great yogi Durvasa simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्तासितमत्परा वशैः यस्येन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. Tani, those senses, Sarvani, all, Sayapya, keeping under control, Yuktaha, engaged, Asita, should be situated, Matpara, in relationship with me. Vashe, in full subjugation, he is certainly Yasya, one whose Indriyani, senses, Tasya, is Prajna, consciousness, Pratishtita, fixed. One who restrains his senses and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. That is the highest conception of yoga perfection in Krishna consciousness. Is clear to us. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not at all possible to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasa Muni picked up a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarish, and Durvasa Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful as Yogi and the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, Sarita tolerated all the sages in distress and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of the following qualifications as mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayor vachansi vaikunta gunanu varnane taro harir mandira mahajanadeshu shrutim chakarachya satkathodaye mukandalingalaya darshane drisho तद्भृत्यगात्र स्पर्शे अंगसंगमम् घ्राणं च तत्पाद सरोज सौरभे श्रीमत्तुलस्यारसनां तदर्पिते पादो हरे क्षेत्र पदानुसर्पणे शिरो ऋषिकेश पदाभिवन्दने कामं च दास्येन तु काम काम्या यथोत्तम श्लोक जनाश्रयारति. Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temper of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matparaha devotee of the Lord. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. How can one become a Matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarish. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, a great scholar and acharya in the line of the Matpara, remarks, Mat Bhakti Prabhavena Sarvendriya Vijay Purvika Swatma Drushti Sulabheti Bhava. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As the small flames within burn everything within the room, similarly, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something which is not Vishnu form simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious devoted to the personality of Godhead. This is the main aim of the real yoga. ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसा संगस्तेषुपजायते संगात् संजायते कामा कामात् क्रोधो विजायते. Dhyayata, while contemplating, Vishaya sense objects. Pumsa Sadha attachment issue in the sense objects. Upajayate develops. Sangat from attachment. Sanjayate develops. Kamaha desire. Kama from desire. Krodha anger. Avijayate becomes manifest. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjugated to material desires while contemplating the objects of senses. The senses require real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planet, is subjected to the influence of sense objects. And the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. But Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal. And as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakur was a young devotee of the Lord, he was simply alluded, he was similarly alluded by the incarnation of Maya Devi. But Haridas easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above mentioned verse of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material sense enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment in the association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not therefore in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure to ultimately fail. For the is sure ultimately to fail. For the slightest thought of self pleasure will agitate him to gratify his desires. So, क्रोधा भवति सम्मोह सम्मोह स्मृति विभ्रमा स्मृति भ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति क्रोधात् from anger bhavati takes place sammoha perfect illusion sammoha from illusion smriti of memory vibhrama bewilderment smriti bhrangshat after bewilderment of memory buddhinasha loss of intelligence buddhinasha and from the loss of intelligence pranashyati one falls down. From anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again in a material pool. By development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects, and as a result, although they desire liberation from material bodies, they do not attain to the perfect state of renunciation. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord or the absolute being impersonal cannot eat, whereas an impersonalist tries to avoid good eatables. A devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and that he eats all that is offered to him in devotion. After offering good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasadam. Thus everything becomes spiritualized and there is no danger of downfall. The devotee takes prasadam in Krishna consciousness, whereas the non-devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalists therefore cannot enjoy life due to their artificial renunciation. And for this reason, a slight agitation of the mind pulls him down again into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising up one falls down again due to his not having support in devotional service. So here, Dhyayato Vishan Pumsa Sangaste Shupajayate Sangat Sajayate Kama Kama Krodha Vidayate. Dhyayata, one who contemplates Vishayan, sense objects as a sound, Pumsa for a person, Sangaha attachment issue for those sense objects, Upajayate arises. Sangat from attachment, Sanjayate arises Kama, a desire or lust, Kama from lust, Krodha Anger, abhijayate, arises. By continuously meditating on the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment to them. Attachment gives rise to lust, which in turn leads to the awakening of anger. Bhagavan Shri Krishna says, control of the mind is the fundamental means by which those who are Sina Prajna control their external senses. However, hear from me, O Arjuna, mind, hear from me, O Arjuna, about what happens when one is unable to control his mind. The present verse beginning with Dhyayata is spoken to explain this topic. By meditating on sense objects, one develops attachment, from which lust, excessive desire for those objects awakens. Anger then arises if for some reason the fulfillment of this desire is obstructed. क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहः स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति. क्रोधात्, from anger, bhavati comes sammoha, utter confusion, lacking the discrimination to know what to do and what not to do. Sammoha, from such confusion, smriti vibhrama, loss of memory. Smriti bhrangshat, from loss of memory, buddhi nasha, intelligence is destroyed. Buddhi nasha, from loss of intelligence, pranashati, by this one is completely ruined and falls into the ocean of repeated birth and death. Anger gives rise to utter delusion, and from such delusion comes loss of memory, forgetting the instructions of the scriptures. Loss of memory destroys one's intelligence, and when intelligence is destroyed, one's entire spiritual direction in life is lost. One falls into the ocean of material existence. Sara to Vashini. From anger comes delusion, in which there is a loss of discrimination between what is to be done and what is not to be done. When the jiva is in a deluded condition, he forgets the instructions of the scriptures, which are the cause of auspiciousness for him. When his memory is lost, his intelligence loses the capacity to function properly. After that, the sadhaka again falls into the web of material life. The mind indeed is the chief controller and the impelling cause of the senses. Therefore, by controlling the mind, the external senses are automatically controlled. Thus, in the Vedas, it is said, Yada Panchavatisthate Jnanadi Manasa Saha Buddhishthana Vicheshtati Tam Ahu Paramangati. If one can control his five knowledge acquiring senses, his mind and his intelligence, he attains the supreme destination. Otherwise, if the mind and other senses are not subdued, one has to wander in the cycle of birth and death. It is also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 21st chapter, 19 and 21st verse. 19 to 21st verses. Visheshu gunadhyasat pumsa sangas tato bhavet. Sanga tatra bhavet kamaha kamad eva kavirnayam. When one contemplates the qualities of sense objects, attachment arises. From attachment, desires ensue, and unfulfilled desires lead to quarrel. Kalir dur vishaha krodhas tamah tam anuvartate tasmat grashate grasyate pumsaha chetana vyapini dhrandam. From quarrel, understand anger arises. Anger causes delusion, and when one is in delusion, the wisdom to discriminate between right and wrong vanishes. Taya virahita sadhu jantu shunyaya kalpati tadvasya swartha vibhramusho tasya murtasya cha. O gentle one, a man who has lost his discrimination becomes like an inert matter, and from that condition he slides down to states of unconsciousness and becomes almost dead. Thus the supreme purpose of life is defeated. If someone forcibly tries to subdue his external senses without controlling his mind, the results are extremely unpleasant. It is therefore one's duty to control the mind by worshipping Bhagavan with very special endeavor. Consequently, Sri Bhagavan's statement in the Gita, Tani Sarvani Sanyama, is completely logical. So, Raga Dvesha Vimuktestu Vishyan Indriyan Charan Atma Vashaya Videyatma Prasadam Adhigachati. Raga attachment, Dvesha and detachment, Vimukta by one who has become free from two, but Vishaya, sense objects, Indriya, by the senses, Charan, acting upon, Atma Vishayi, Atma Vashayi, under one's control, Videya, Atma, One who follows regulated freedom, prasadam, the mercy of the Lord, abhigachati, attains. One who can control his senses by practicing the regulated principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord and thus become free from all attachment and aversion. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental sense of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person is full of Krishna consciousness, may apparently be on the sensual plane because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment. If Krishna wants, the devotees can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. And if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, the act of not to act is within his control because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. The consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Hare Krishna. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanirasya pajayate prasannati kasloki ashu buddhi parivatisthate. Prasade, on achievement of the causeless mercy of the Lord, sarva of all, dukkhanam material miseries, hani destruction, asya his, upajayate takes place. Prasanna chetasa of the happy minded, he suddenly, ashu very soon, buddhi intelligence, pari sufficiently, avatisthate becomes established. For one who is so situated in the divine consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such a happy state, one's intelligence soon becomes steady. Ragadesha Ragadeshamuktastu Vishayan Indriyan Sharan Atmavashyer Videyatma Prasadam Adhikati Raga attachment, Dvesha and aversion. Vimuktahi free to, however, Vishayan sense objects, Indriyahi by the senses, Chara even while enjoying Atmavashya which are under his control. Videyatma, a man of controlled senses, prasadam, joyfulness, adhigachati, attains. A man of controlled senses, however, who is free from attachment and aversion, attains the stage of joyfulness even while enjoying suitable objects to his senses. Previously, Arjuna asked, how does one who is Tita Pragya behave? In response to this question, Sri Bhagavan speaks this verse beginning with Raga. Since the mind cannot directly accept sense objects, there is no fault in accepting sense objects which with controlled senses. Videyatma means one whose mind is fixed in the instructions of Bhagavan only. Prasadam adhigachati implies that there is no fault in such qualified persons except sense objects. In fact, it is specifically their credit because they see that everything is related to Bhagavan. One who is Thita Pragya may or may not give up sense objects, and he may or may not be motivated to attain them. In any case, everything is auspicious for him. Sarartha Vashli Prakashika Vritti. Even when the external senses are controlled by keeping them aloof from the sense objects, the mind does not stop thinking of them. Such renunciation is called Shalku, useless, or murder vairagya, monkey like renunciation. This is stated in Gita 3.6. Karmendriyani Sanyam. When a sadhaka practices appropriate renunciation by engaging everything in the service of the Lord and worships Sri Bhagavan, he can control his mind and absorb it in thinking of his worshipable deity. When he has reached such a stage, there is no fault in his accepting those sense objects that are favorable to his practice and rejecting those that are unfavorable. प्रसादे सर्व दुःखानां हानिरस्योपजायते प्रसन्नचेतसो हि आशु बुद्धि पर्यवतिष्ठते. Prasade, on attainment of that joyful state, sarva dukkhanam, of all miseries, hani, dispelled far away, asya of that person whose mind and senses are controlled, upajayate takes place, prasanna chetasa, For the person whose mind is content, he suddenly has to very soon buddhi, intelligence, whatever tishtati becomes completely fixed in attaining his heart desire. When that self-controlled person attains the stage of joyfulness, all of his miseries are dispelled and his intelligence soon becomes completely fixed upon attaining his desired goal. Buddhi Parivartishtate means that in all respects his intelligence becomes stable and fixed on the desired goal. Thus he remains happy, whether he accepts sense objects or not. Prasanna Chetasa indicates that it should be understood that internal happiness will come only from bhakti. Because without bhakti the heart cannot become pleased. This has been explained vividly in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which describes how Vyasadev's mind was not happy even after he had compiled the Vedanta Sutra. However, when he followed the instructions of Sri Narada, his heart became blissful through the exclusive practice of bhakti. Sarata Varshini Prakashika Bhakti. The heart can be pleased only by bhakti, rendering loving devotional service to Sri Bhagavan. Bhakti removes all miseries, and in a very short period, a person who practices bhakti easily becomes fully fixed at the lotus feet of his worshipful Lord. He is also described in a dialogue between Vyasa and Narad in Srimad Bhagavatam. From Dhruta Pratena hi Maya to Yamadevir Yoga Pathe Kama Loha Hatom. When the sadhaka practices yama and niyama, sense control, by observing strict regulations, which are on the path of the eightfold process of yoga and mind, yoga, the mind, which is always under the control of lust and greed, attains a certain level of happiness and peace. However, there is no comparison between this and the immediate and immense pleasure attained by service to Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, Srimad Bhagavatam 1.6.35. In this regard, it is worth deliberating on the examples of Saubhadra Rishi, Yati Maharaj, and Vishwamitra Muni and others. Saubhadra Rishi was unable to control his mind even after performing austerities within the water of the Jamuna for 10,000 years. His mind became agitated by seeing fish engaging in sex life. He emerged from the water to marry the 50 daughters of King Mandata, but his lust remained unsatiated, even after enjoying with them by expanding himself into 50 forms. Eventually, he attained his desired goal by controlling his senses through the worship of Shiv Bhagavan. Yanti Maharaj was not able to control his mind, despite various endeavors. He exchanged his old age for the youth of his son Puru and endured for many years, but his lusty desires increased just as ghee nourishes fire. He could not attain peace when he finally fixed his mind in the world. He could only attain peace when he finally fixed his mind in the worship of Bhagavan. Although Vishwamitra Muni engaged in severe austerities by practicing Shama, mind control, and Dhamma, sense control, and subduing his senses, he still abandoned his austerities upon hearing Menka's ankle bells and became absorbed in lustful activity. His agitated mind eventually could find peace in the worship of Bhagavan. The conclusion is specifically verified in the dialogue between Vyasa and Narad in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Vedavyas had already divided the Vedas into four parts and had compiled Mahabharata, the Puranas, and the Vedanta Sutra. Although he had described knowledge of religious duty, dharma, and other such topics for the information of people in general, his mind remained unsatisfied. Unable to understand why, he inquired from the spiritual master Sri Narada. Sri Narada Vacha Bhavatanudita Prayam Yasho Bhagavato Amalam Yenevasau Natusheta Manne Tattarsanam Khilam Yatha Dharmadayasartham Munivaryanu Kirtitaha Na Tatha Vasudevasya Mahimahi Anuvarnita. O great sage, you have described the processes of mundane religiosity, dharma, and knowledge, jnana, which I consider to be incomplete and insignificant, but you have not clearly described the topics of Sri Bhagavan's most purifying pastimes and their glory. Sri Bhagavan cannot be pleased unless one glorifies such pastimes which manifest themselves in the purified mind by the performance of bhakti. Following the instructions of Narad Muni, by performing bhakti yoga, Vyasa was able to see in his pure heart all Sri Krishna's beautiful pastimes, which are full of Aishwarya, opulence, and Madhurya, sweetness. Srimad Bhagavatam consists of the activities of Sri Krishna, which Vyasa realized in his devotional trance of Samadhi. यस्या वैश्रयमाणायां कृष्णे परमपुरुषे bhaktirupadhyate pumsa shomoha bhayapaha. By the culture of hearing and following the Srimad Bhagavatam, devotion to Bhajananda Shri Krishna immediately manifests in the heart, dispelling lamentation, religion, and fear. Hare Krishna. So we'll stop here, and this is the verse number 66, I would say, in Bhagavad Gita. 65 we compared. Next verse will be chapter 2 and verse 66. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpataruvasya kripa sindhu prajapadanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namo. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Guru Gauranga Dandhar Vikar Girdhari Shri Shri Radha Guna Pyarji ki jai. Vitala Prashta Guru Shri Shri Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Vitala Prashta Vishnu Pas Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Vitala Prashta Vishnu Pas Shri Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ki jai. आचार्य केशरी श्री श्रीमद भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय. विमला पृष्ठ विष्णुपाद श्री श्रीमद भक्ति रक्षक श्रीधर गोस्वामी महाराज की जय. विमला पृष्ठ विष्णुपाद श्री श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद ठाकुर की जय. प्रेम से गौ श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय. जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपी गो गोवर्धन नाथ सोनात्मक मंडल की जय. गंगा जमुना तुलसी देवी की जय. श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा चक्रजू की जय. सर्व विघ्न विनाशन भक्ति विघ्न विनाशन भगवान की जय. जय श्री जय स्वामी श्री भक्तिदान दंडी महाराज की जय. नाम संत दास प्रभु की जय. मठेल से वृंद की जय. धामवासी भक्त वृंद की जय. समागत भक्त वृंद की जय. निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. निताई गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल. Thank you devotees for attending this class, and we are very interesting Bhagavad Gita. We are studying both the commentaries. We are very fortunate that we are studying Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj's commentary and also Srila Gurudev, Srila Vishwanath Thakur's commentary, Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan Path's commentary. So we are benefiting by this, and this is very valuable instructions from Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself. Thank you so much. Anchakalpataruvasya kripa sindhu Paridanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo. Dhanavada. Hare Krishna.